Hello, welcome to the Clear Administrative Services Credential Program Makeup Session for Network Meeting 4. We're happy to provide you with this opportunity to make up the content from the session you missed. Please note, however, that in-person attendance is much more beneficial to you and to your colleagues because of the opportunities it affords for networking, connecting, and dialoguing about key issues in education. The topic of this network meeting is equity in our schools. Our CASC program here in the Leadership Institute is committed to maintaining an emphasis on issues of equity and developing educational leaders who promote equity in the day-to-day context in which they work. In addition to this iSpring presentation, we have provided 2 handouts: Equitable Classroom Practices and Beads of Privilege posters. Please have them handy because you will use them as you move through the presentation. We hope that this session will stimulate your thinking and move you to action in ways that you have never considered, simply because you will have seen things from a new perspective. As a warm-up, the first thing we would like for you to do is answer a question about equality versus equity. Click on the Start Quiz button to answer the question. We will explore more about the differences between equality and equity in the slides to come. For now, let's understand that both equality and equity have to do with the word all. All students should succeed. All students should learn, or as the RCOE pledge says, all students in Riverside County will graduate from high school well prepared for college and the workforce. Equality and equity are about ensuring that all students, no matter their race, culture, background, gender, language, economic status, or disability, should be able to succeed in our educational system. Of course, we know that in reality, it is easier for some students than for others. Some have the highway to success paved for them, while for others there is no highway or ladder, or it is not sturdy enough to allow them to make the journey. Unfortunately, we can often predict success or failure based on social or cultural factors. We call that inequity. Take a look at this picture. Reflect for a moment on what it communicates about equality and equity. Now, click the Start Quiz button to share your reflections about the picture. Here is another picture about equality and equity that may speak to you even more. So, again we ask, what is the difference between? Equity is defined as equality of opportunity with a focus on outcomes and results. In other words, equity does not mean being treated in exactly the same way. It means being provided with whatever scaffolding is needed so that all students have an equal opportunity to succeed. Those with less to begin with will need more time, attention, and support. We will know when equity has been achieved when all students receive the resources they need so they graduate prepared for success after high school. Think for a moment about the statement in red letters. Equality cannot be achieved without ensuring equity. On this slide, you will see what the National Equity Project believes is necessary if we are to work towards equity for all students. Take note especially of the 4th bullet, examine our biases. There is a lot of research to support that we often have unconscious biases that we must uncover and deal with if we want to operate equitably. At this time, take out the article provided on equitable classroom practices from Montgomery County Public Schools. Read, or at least skim through it. It is organized in such a way that it is easy to read. The purpose of reading this article is to provide some very practical ideas of what equity looks like in the classroom. When you have finished, you will take a quick quiz. When you are ready, click the Start Quiz button to proceed. We hope that the brief look at these classroom strategies provided some insights into practical ways to begin implementing equity in the everyday context of school. This slide lists some of the policies and practices that impact educational equity. In other words, sometimes inequity is built right into the fabric of the policies and practices that govern the operation of our schools. Where do the funds go? Does every student have access to high-level curriculum? Are the best teachers working with the neediest students? Let's move down to technology access. This is going to be an increasingly important issue as technology use becomes more prevalent in our schools. Everything listed here has an impact on equity. But let's focus on one area for now, discipline policies. The data you will see next is Riverside County demographic data, followed by Riverside County Office of Education alternative education data. Notice here that in Riverside County, 62% of our students are Hispanic, 22.9% are white, and 6.4% are African American, which accounts for 91.3% of the students. In terms of gender, the breakdown is roughly 50-50 between male and female students. In this chart, we see that our African American students are roughly 6% of the total population, but 18% of the suspended population and 9% of the expelled population. This means that our African American students are overrepresented in suspensions and expulsions. For Hispanic students, which are roughly 60% of the population, they are proportionately represented in suspensions, but overrepresented in expulsions. For the white populations, students are underrepresented in suspensions and expulsions. The percentage of suspended and expelled white students is far lower than the percentage of white students in the total population. Moving from the general population of students in Riverside County to the population of students in RCOE's alternative education programs, here is a breakdown of enrollment by ethnicity. Alternative education students are those who have been expelled, in trouble with the law, or otherwise have not been successful in regular district schools. The graph represents 3 years of enrollment data. As you can see, the enrollment is 67 to 69% Hispanic and 16 to 18% of African American, demonstrating once again an overrepresentation of these ethnicities in all DED. And again, white students are underrepresented in the alt-ed population. This graph illustrates that though the general population of students is approximately 50% male and 50% female, there are almost twice as many male students as female students in the community schools, and 5 times as many male students as female students in court schools. Think about the data you have seen, and then click on the Start Quiz button to respond to the implications of the data. The discipline data just discussed provides a good picture of what we mean by inequity that occurs through our policies and practices, which brings up a new question. What impacts the decisions we make related to issues of equity? Policies and practices exist at an institutional and societal level, but institutions and societies are made up of individual people making decisions, setting policies, and engaging in those practices. So let's look for a moment at ourselves and how the cultures we live in may influence us. Culture is defined as a way of being, seeing, and doing. It is internally defined, and we see evidence of it in our behaviors, which are learned. You can see on the slide the factors that shape culture. Each person is affected by all of these factors, which is why there is often variation within cultures. Culture is also like an iceberg. The majority of it is under the water. Our behaviors are the primary evidence others see of our culture. Under the surface are our beliefs, values, and thought patterns. The kinds of behaviors that clue others into our culture include such things as the food we eat, how we dress, our customs, and our language. But look at the list of things we cannot always know about a person until we get to know them fairly well. Because of these hidden factors, we sometimes judge people on their behaviors without understanding why they behave the way they do. Our inability or reluctance to understand the hidden rules and values of cultures other than those of the dominant culture can sometimes result in making decisions that promote inequities in the system. Now let's look at another area that may impact our decisions related to equity, the area of privilege. You will be doing an activity now that may shed some light on what privilege looks like in our society. Often this is hidden, particularly from those in the dominant culture. You may find that you enjoy privileges you never considered to be privileges. This activity is called Beads of Privilege. This was a hands-on activity in the network meeting, but we will modify it for this makeup session. Review the Beads of Privilege posters handout we provided and asked you to set aside at the beginning of this session. Read through each poster in the handout and put a check mark, a virtual bead, by each statement that is true for you. When you are finished, reflect on what you learned using the questions on the next slide. As you think about these questions, jot down a few notes about your thoughts. You will use them in the next quiz. Again, click the Start Quiz button to proceed. Thank you for completing the final quiz. The final 2 handouts we sent you are Guidelines for Cultural Proficiency and The Cultural Proficiency Continuum. These are both resources from the book Cultural Proficiency by Lindsay, Nuri Robbins, and Terrell. This book is an excellent resource for better understanding equity issues. These handouts are for your information and reflection only. Thank you for completing the Network Meeting 4 makeup session. The responses to the quizzes allow us to verify that you have completed the session. We look forward to seeing you at Network Meeting 5.